F1 75 was this afternoon. I may or may not have been watching it in the background while I was supposed to be working. I'll confess, I did it. I watched all of the car launches live. Brandon has caught up since he got off, so we are ready to react to all of the liveries. Welcome back to another episode of the Podium Pushers podcast. My name is Justin. As always, I am joined by the lovely Brandon Arlington. We have seen all 10 2025 liveries, which means we are so close to seeing cars on tracks. Now that we've seen the liveries with our own eyes, had some time to process them, we're going to give them all a rating on a scale of 1 to 10, ask our biggest question remaining for each team as we're going into 2025. Brandon, how you feeling?
I'm feeling great. This is truly what feels like the beginning of the 2025 Formula One season. We're so close to having cars on track, which is so exciting, and I'm just pumped.
Yeah, next week we have testing. I didn't realize that until today. I knew we were getting closer, but I officially looked at the calendar and I was like, oh my gosh, we're close to seeing cars on track. So that means we should waste no further time and jump right into this, starting with Kick Sauber. And I've given their livery a 3 out of 10 for the year. I do not like it that much. I got to be honest with you. I've never been a fan of that green. I understand why they have to use it because that is Kick's entire branding. But I don't love it. They did a weird gradient. I think they made the gradient too short and it's like green to black, way too quick. I'm not a fan. I don't think it looks good from the front or the side. So I've given it a 3 out of 10.
Yeah, I've gone with a 5 out of 10. I think it's all right. I like that they kind of leaned into the green a little bit more. Like from the front of the car, it looks completely green, which is kind of cool. But other than the gradient is, I think, way too quick. But I'm going with 5 out of 10. It's all right. It's not ever going to be a great livery though, in my opinion.
Every time they've released a livery with that green in it, I've been like, I could make that on the F1 game. Like, it's nothing special. That's always how I feel when I see those liveries. And one quick thing about their launch, that was the very first one of the show, and they had a drum line. If you didn't know this about me, I did drumline in high school, and they sounded awful. Maybe we could they were playing the easiest thing in the world. Maybe we could just clean that up a little bit. That's my one critique on the launch. But our biggest question left for Stake is not about the drum line. It is, will they actually score any points this year? You could make the argument that the team does not care about this year, that they're going into Audi. 2026 is the big thing they could focus on. So how do you feel about Stake going into 2025?
I mean, I feel all right about them. I think they're going to be the slowest car once again this year. I do think it is probably in their best interest to focus all the resources that they have on 2026 when they do become Audi. And I know with all that going on behind the scenes, it's probably hard to divert enough resources to be really successful in 2025. But I mean, I do hope that the field is competitive enough to where they will score some points and not just like, one P7 or P10 at a random race throughout the year, that maybe they get, 2 or 3 P10s, that they're in the mix some weekends. So I'm really hoping that it is that competitive, but I'm, don't have high hopes, I would say.
Yeah, well, if there's one driver to take advantage of some midfield points on the table, it is Nico Hulkenberg. So they've got 24 races and 6 sprints. I'm sure they'll pick up a few points this year, if I had to guess. Moving on to Williams, I've given their livery a 7 out of 10. I like it. I think the use of multiple different blues was nice. I'm glad they have a title sponsor. I think that's really important for the team. I think they didn't go too crazy. I love when the team just makes most of their sponsor logos white and keeps it consistent. I think that's a nice, clean look for a livery. It is ironic that I think their testing livery they ran a couple days ago looked better than the livery that they're running right now. But I understand that that livery wasn't the most sponsor friendly. So I've given it a 7 out of 10. I think it's a good livery, not the greatest livery I've ever seen.
Yeah, I agree with that. I've gone with the 6 out of 10. I just, I really wanted their livery to be wildly different. But it wasn't ever going to be, probably. And I do like the 2 different blues. At first, when I saw it on the F1 75 live recap, whatever, I saw it at first glance. I was like, man, that is just an all blue car. And then looked at the pictures, looked a little closer. I saw the blue gradient, two different blues. I do like that a lot. So I've gone 6 out of 10, a little bit above average, which probably, hopefully, will be where Williams ends up this year. A little bit above average. That'd be
Yeah,
nice.
we will see. They've come a long way from some of the horrible liveries they had in like 2019, 2020. So I'm glad they're moving in the right direction in livery and performance. That is a good thing. The biggest question we have for Williams is, will Carlos Sainz have an immediate impact on the team? In my mind, there's no way that he doesn't. I think we've seen their car has moved in a good direction from what it looks like. It kind of looks a little bit like an SF24 in some areas. I think obviously he has probably played a large role in them getting some increased sponsorship for this year. I think he has a lot of experience that will guide the team in the right directions. So I think Carlos Sainz will be a big help to the team. How are you feeling about Carlos joining Williams?
I feel good about it. I agree with you. I think it just also points to James Valls and his leadership. I think James has done a good job of bringing in good people to Williams since he kind of took over as team principal. And, Carlos is one of those people. So I think that Carlos is going to have a good impact on the team. He's bringing in good sponsor money. I mean, he's a race-winning driver. He's raced for a top team before. So I see no way that he doesn't have a positive impact on the car. I mean, at the very least, it's not going to be the worse or the same as having Logan Sargent and Franco Colapinto. Those are fast drivers in their own right, but they're not Carlos Sainz. So.
Yeah, I'm sure Carlos Sainz will certainly help the repair bill compared to those two drivers. So I'm sure Williams wouldn't mind that either. Moving on to Visa Cash App, Racing Bulls officially changed the name, no longer RB. They have become Racing Bulls, which is better than RB, but also still kind of dumb. I'll admit it, but I love their livery. Their livery, I'm giving a 10 out of 10. It looked incredible. I was not expecting that at all. I kind of just expected more of the same for them. I expected them to roll out a livery that was very similar to what they had last year, and it is completely different. It looks like the white bull that Red Bull ran in 2020. It's beautiful. I love the little Red Bull design logo gradient pattern they did on the back. It looks incredible. The race suits look awesome. Yuki's little helmet that's white and has the leaves on it is going to look incredible with it. I love that livery.
Me too. I think I mean, I won't say anything about any other liveries that we haven't talked about yet, but it is one of the top liveries on the grid this year. It looks fantastic. It's kind of like as, creative as I wish Red Bull would be with their livery. And I'm excited to see them drive that car. And I'm excited to see all the team kit gear that comes out with it, because I think that's going to be great too. So.
Yeah, well, they had horrible merch last year, so it can only go up from there, one would think. Our biggest question for Racing Bulls is what happens to their driver lineup. Last year, we had a lot of focus on the Red Bull driver lineup. Now we are looking towards their junior team. Yuki Tsunoda has been there for what feels like a decade. Surely his time with the team has to be coming to an end. Isaac Hadjar seems like a bit of a filler driver. Maybe we're waiting for Arvid Lindblad to come in next season or perhaps midway through this season. So the driver lineup is a bit up in the air right now. How are you feeling about those drivers?
Yeah, I mean, I think Yuki and Isaac are great drivers for 2025. I think this for Racing Bulls needs to be a season where they figure out what the long-term plan is, or at least longer than 1 year at a time for term plan is. Because Yuki isn't going to stay at the team forever. I think that there's a big chance he jumps to another team at the end of 2025, especially with Honda coming back into the sport in 2026 with Aston Martin. Um, so we'll kind of see what happens with Yuki, but Isaac, kind of just came onto the scene right there at the end of last year. And, it was like one weekend, Christian Horner came out and said, Isaac Hadjar is someone who I think is ready for Formula One. And it's like, we hadn't really heard much about them talking about Isaac at all until that happened. And then, boom, there he was, race seat 2025. So I hope Isaac does really well. I'd like to see him stay for the whole season, but I also see a scenario where he doesn't. So.
Yeah, the big Red Bull thing in the press about Isaac Hadjar before that one was like a year ago where they said he's not ready for Formula One. So
Right.
we'll see if Isaac makes it the whole year. It was the obvious choice, but doesn't seem like a choice that they're fully standing behind and expecting him to move to the main team someday. So still a lot of questions around that driver lineup. We'll have to see what happens. Moving on to Haas, I'm giving their livery a 7 out of 10. It's basic, it's simple, it's very similar to last year, but there's a lot of white where there was black or carbon fiber last year. I love the side pods where it's white paint and the Haas logo is black. I think that looks better than they had it last year. And I know it's simple, but it also is very identifiable as a Haas. It feels like they're starting to get some continuity as a brand, as a team. I see that livery. I immediately think Haas. It feels on brand to them. So it's nothing special. It's fairly simple, but I do like it. So I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10.
Yeah, I'm going with 5 out of 10 for the Haas livery. It's just too simple for me. I feel like they could do so much more with it. I feel like the 2021, 2022 Haas liveries were really good. They had a little bit more blue in them. I know that was for um, Your Alkali, which is a sponsor they used to have, but I also like the red, white, and blue. They're America's team,
It
right?
was for Russia. It doesn't count. It doesn't count. They can lean into the American thing if they want, but they don't get points for that because it was the Russia red, white, and blue.
That's true, but all I'm saying is I wish they would lean into the America red, white, and blue a little bit more. But I also feel like there's, you know, kind of a lot of exposed carbon on the car. But anyway, 5 out of 10. I didn't think it was horrible. I didn't think it was great. Hopefully we can see them win some races or something this year.
At
They'll probably,
least we know they're going to come out with the most incredible special livery when we see them in Austin because they have knocked it out of the park the last few years. So the American design we desire, we will get to see in Austin, that's for sure. Our biggest question for Haas going into this year is will they keep their momentum from last year? Haas took quite the step in performance last year, probably would have finished P6 in the constructors if it weren't for that crazy race in Brazil. And no one expected that. We predicted them to finish last. I think everyone expected them to finish last. And they had a great year. They've got a fully new driver lineup, but Esteban Ocon, very capable driver. Ollie Behrman looks to be one of the most promising rookies we've seen in a while. And so I'm expecting Haas to keep their momentum up. How are you feeling about them?
Yeah, I also think that it's going to keep the momentum going. I think Io Komatsu has done a great job of kind of steering the ship in a positive direction. We're seeing other things that are also showing that Haas is like doing well. They're able to spend up to the budget cap this year, which is something they haven't been able to do in the past, which is also good for long-term sustainability of the team. Gene Haas probably isn't going to have to keep maybe throwing millions of dollars at the team this year to just to keep it afloat. And I hope they continue to be successful because it's been a lot of fun to watch them, especially last year with Kevin and Nico. That was a great driver pairing. I think Esteban and Ollie is also going to be a great driver pairing. So I'm excited to see what they can do.
Yeah, I feel much more proud to be an American and watch an American team in F1 now that Haas is improving. So I hope they keep it up this year. Alpine, this is the livery that I have the most mixed feelings about. So I've given it a 5 out of 10, right down the middle. Thank you for putting paint on your car this year, Alpine. I appreciate it. You had started to put some paint on at the end of the year last year. You put even more on this year. That's great. There's a lot of pink. I like it. The one thing that ruins it for me is the pink BWT on the side. I think it looks awful. If it was white and had the pink outline instead of pink with a black outline, it would look so much better. I think it looks awful on the side, and I don't know if it's because the pink, if it's because the black outline looks horrible against the blue. I don't know. But that side pod just ruins the whole car for me. I can't give it any higher than a 5.
Yeah, I've gone with a 7 out of 10 just because I think the last year's livery was so awful. It had the expectations just on the floor. I like that they leaned into the pink a little bit more. I agree with you. I don't think the BWT on the side looks good at all, but I'm just glad that there's color on the car, that there's paint on the car. They're leaning into the pink. I like the how when you look at it straight from the front, the car looks entirely pink. So that's kind of cool. I'm going with 7 out of 10. And I think it's definitely just a lot better than last year.
Yeah. I gotta give him props, and you're right. I do like when a team does it where you look at it from the front, it looks like it's one color, then you see it from the side and it adds more color. I think that is a cool design technique. We've seen a couple teams do that this year, but the logo on the side just ruins it for me. I can't do it. Our biggest question for Alpine is will they start 2025 as fast as they finished 2024? They were horrible at the beginning of last year. I probably could have gone faster running beside that car than they were going on track when we showed up to Bahrain. And then they finished the year great. Probably the team with the most momentum finishing the year last year. It came out of nowhere. Pierre Gasly looked incredible. He is now firmly the team leader at that team. Everyone's looking towards him. They have a new rookie second driver. So, still a bit of a wild card with Alpine. I don't trust them fully, but surely they'll at least start faster than they started last year.
Yeah, I think they have done a good job in terms of developing the car last year. I think that the positive momentum and maybe the lack of like turnover in terms of staff and all that stuff over the off season will help them start in a positive place. I think the last couple years we saw like somebody getting replaced like every couple weeks, it seemed like last off season. And I think that'll help them start the year in a better spot because there's no way that they start in a worse spot. That's for
Yep.
sure.
I think this is the first like break we've had from Formula One where Alpine haven't decided to sack half their staff. So that's good for them. And surely that will pay off going into this year. Aston Martin, I've got a 7 out of 10 written down. I have thought about it. I'm giving them a 6 out of 10. It's getting lower. I love the green. It's iconic. But every year in these new regulations, they've just lost more and more paint, and it just gets it to be more carbon. There's too much carbon this year. The green is nice. The neon stripe in it looks great. There's too much carbon though, and if they had more of that British racing green, it would be higher because it's a beautiful color on the car and it looks great under the lights. It's awesome, but there's too much carbon this year.
Yeah, I agree. I've gone with 6 out of 10. I don't think that Aston has leaned into the British racing green enough. They haven't leaned into the neon enough either. I wish that the entire car was like covered in the British racing green and then they had like a neon nose or something. I don't know, something more crazy, something more pop of color. I do love the British racing green. I just don't think that they've done enough to warrant anything higher than a 6 out of 10 with that livery. But it does look good. It does look good, and I do like it.
Yeah, I'm never gonna say that that color looks bad because it is a beautiful color on a car. So they've got a good baseline to go from with that being the color they use. Unfortunately, with there not being a lot of paint on that car, I think that means they think they're gonna be slow this year, which slides right into our question, which is how long until we see the Adrian Newey effect? We've talked about it almost every podcast we've done this offseason because it is a burning question in all of our minds. We know he hasn't even started work yet and surely he'll be focusing a lot on the 2026 car. But he's got to have something up his sleeve for 2025. I mean, they're going to develop the car anyways. You might as well use Adrian Newey's input, right? And so, certainly at some point, they have to improve because he is there. It's just a matter of time until we actually start to see it.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think there's no way that having Adrian Newey in your building is not going to have a positive impact on you developing a car or, just how you operationally develop a car. I think that's something we've seen Aston Martin struggle with a lot. And Adrian has been a part of, successful Formula One teams for what, like 40, 45 years now. So that experience, that knowledge is going to be worth every penny for them. And I think we're going to see that pretty quick, personally.
Yeah, and they spent quite a few pennies to get him, so I hope it is
Yep.
worth every penny for him. But Lawrence has quite a few pennies to spare, so maybe it'll all just work out in the end. A Mercedes, I've given them a 7 out of 10. It's very similar. It's very similar to last year, but I think it's a good livery. I like, as I said before, from the nose, it looks a bit different from the side. They've leaned in more to the black. I like the black numbers on it. I think it looks a little better than the like neon outline they've done the last few years. I like the black. So I think it's a slight improvement on last year, but to me, they had one of the most similar liveries this year as to last year. So didn't love it, but 7 out of 10. It's pretty good.
Yeah, I've also gone with a 7 out of 10 for Mercedes, kind of for the same reasons as you. As soon as I saw it from the front, I was like, man, that's the same car. We can't be doing that. But then saw it from the side. I was like, that's good. I think it kind of takes some of the best parts of the liveries from like the last 5, 6 years and kind of combines it into one.
Mhm.
But I do think the car looks really good. 7 out of 10. They didn't change it up enough for me to give it any higher, but it's a great livery. I thought the car looked fantastic last year, and I think it looks good again this year.
Yeah, Mercedes, another one of those iconic brands that if you're throwing that silver in the Mercedes logo on a car, it's gonna be pretty hard to mess up. So our biggest question for Mercedes is how do Kimi and George compare in their first season as teammates? George, now the team leader of Mercedes, Kimi Antonelli, this rookie that everyone is so incredibly hyped to see. I can imagine that this might not be the closest teammate battle, but I think it might be the teammate battle with the most fireworks this year in my mind. There's no way rookie Kimi Antonelli doesn't do something to annoy George Russell across the course of the season. So I am incredibly excited to see how they compare this year.
Yeah, me too. I enjoyed seeing feisty George Russell for a little bit of time last year when Mercedes was doing well. And I think we're definitely going to see that with Kimi in the car as well. He's got something to prove. He's an barely 18-year-old in a top team in Formula One. So I'm excited to see how quick he is and how George responds to that.
Yeah, I didn't even know what I wanted to major in at college when I was 18, and Kimi Antonelli is about to be driving a race-winning Formula One car. So that really puts into perspective how my life has gone. But at least we get to talk about Formula One, which is pretty great, and I wouldn't trade it for a thing. Moving on to Red Bull, I've given it a 9 out of 10. I don't care what anybody thinks. This is our generation's iconic livery. All throughout Formula One history, there are liveries that in an era of Formula One stick out, and that is the iconic livery. We are witnessing that right now with Red Bull. It's a great livery, and it looks better this year than it has in years past. They lost some sponsors because Sergio is gone. The car looks less cluttered. The livery fits the bodywork better than it did last year. Bybit is gone, so Red Bull takes up the full front wing. The rear wing sponsor looks better than Bybit did. So I think it improved this year. It's an iconic livery. I love it. I'm giving it a 9 out of 10. I don't care what anybody else thinks.
I initially had a 7 out of 10. I think I'm gonna go 8 out of 10 just because you're right. I'm a Red Bull fan through and through, and I do love that livery. It is iconic. After we talked about it, I do think you're right. It is better. It fits the bodywork way better. They have that stripe down the side of the car, and that looks really good. It matches the race suits very well. I think the suits look fantastic. Um, so I'm going with 8 out of 10. Red Bull is iconic, and I do love watching them race. So
Yeah, how could you hate on that iconic livery? And hopefully, we'll get to see a little bit of a change next year with Ford, anyways. So, this could be the last time we get to see it like this. So, enjoy it while you can. Our biggest question for Red Bull is how does Red Bull stack up against everyone else? I think they have to be the biggest wild card team right now. Theoretically, we've got them pegged as like the third fastest team going off the end of last year, but we have no idea where they could start the beginning of this year. They could be at the top of the grid. They could be the fourth fastest team. They could be fully focused on 2026. Who knows? So I think Red Bull has to be a huge wild card team right now.
yeah, I totally agree. And I think one thing that Red Bull has been really good at in the past is kind of hiding their pace, especially in testing. So I'm excited to see when we show up to Australia, not Bahrain this year, Australia, which is also really exciting. Where do they stack up? Kind of once we hit qualifying in Australia, where's Max and maybe Liam, where are they finishing? So I'm excited to see. I think they could be anywhere from like first to fifth fastest car. So we'll see.
Yeah, new car, new designer, second teammate. I mean, it's very up in the air for Red Bull right now, which is super exciting going into a new season. Ferrari, 10 out of 10, easy. I love that livery. I've seen some hate for it online, I gotta be honest, and I completely disagree with that. The dark red, beautiful. And if you couldn't notice based on my previous rankings, I think white looks beautiful on an F1 car. When they've done special liveries to a Ferrari and added some white, it's looked great. They did a great job putting it under the HP logo so that blue doesn't clash with the red. It's great. They have a lot of blue sponsors. They use the white to balance it out great. It's a beautiful livery. It's incredible. I don't know what else to say. It is probably my favorite livery from this launch. I'm giving it a 10 out of 10 easy.
Yeah, I totally agree. 100%. It is a fantastic livery. The white looks beautiful on that car. It's the perfect amount of white. It's not too much. It's not too little. Um, I think it's great. I think the white numbers on the car also look really, really good. Um, and again, I think one of the biggest things that they did last year was put that HP logo directly on the red car. And I think the white balancing it out is perfect. I think it looks great. 10 out of 10. Really, really hard choice whether I like this one better or the Racing Bulls livery better. But those are my top two.
Yeah,
It's
look at us
amazing.
not being able to pick between the two white liveries. I think you can tell our preferences on a Formula One car. We think they look pretty slick when you use some white in them. Our biggest question for Ferrari, pretty obvious. How does Lewis Hamilton perform in his first year with the team? I have no idea. That's all I can say. As we've gotten further and further into the offseason, it has become even more of a mystery to me. We have talked about how we think Charles Leclerc will win the world championship this year. But I mean, it is just tough for me to count out Lewis Hamilton in good conscience and just say 7-time world champion is going to roll over and get beat by his teammate. He seems energetic every time I've seen him in a Ferrari outfit. He seems motivated. He seems happier than he did in like the last 3 years at Mercedes. And so we could be seeing a second prime of Lewis Hamilton. I think next week in testing would give us a bigger idea. But man, once we show up to that first competitive session in Australia, I cannot wait to see where Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton line up against each other.
Yeah, it's going to be great. I mean, I think he was, especially just watching him talk today at the F175 launch event. He said he is so full of life right now at Ferrari, and totally agree. He seems so happy. He seems so energized, ready to attack the season, and I'm excited to see what he can do. It's going to be incredible, I think.
Yeah, I knew this was gonna happen. I knew he was gonna get the Sebastian Vettel treatment. He was gonna be the villain for winning all these years in a row, and then he was gonna move to Ferrari and get a happy second lease on his career, and everyone was gonna love him. And here we are. It's happening. The fan base is turning back towards Lewis Hamilton. I knew it was gonna happen, and I'm not mad about it. I'm happy to see it. The last team on our list, McLaren. 4 out of 10. I'm sorry. It is the exact same livery as last year. And maybe it's just because they didn't put numbers on the nose cone or the lighting of the O2. But to me, the orange looked worse than last year. It looked to be a different shade, and I didn't like it as much. I think it was a little more matte and a little more light, and I didn't love it. So maybe when I see it on track, fully painted and under actual racing lights, it will look better to me. But right now, didn't love it. Kind of sad. It's the exact same 4 out of 10.
Yeah, I agree. I've also gone with 4 out of 10. I think that year over year, you should change your livery. It brings some excitement to the fans. It, kind of helps create your identity as a brand of a racing team. McLaren is a very iconic racing team brand. Um, I wish they put, if they were going to have something similar to last year, just put more of it on the car. I feel like there's a lot of exposed carbon fiber, and I don't know, the font of the numbers is kind of weird and like robotic looking. I don't really understand that, but um, one thing that McLaren is really good at is one-off special liveries. So hopefully we'll see some good one-off liveries this year from McLaren. We'll see that chrome again, maybe in Austin. Just have to see what happens, but I'm hoping for some good one-off liveries.
Yeah, hopefully this was a one-off livery and they show up to testing with a different livery. That would make me happy too. And I forgot about the biggest thing I hate about it, the stupid MasterCard logos on the wing. That looks
Yeah.
horrible. The two circles on the front wing, it just looks bad. I'm sorry. There's no other way to put it besides the location of that logo on the car. It looks terrible. It's awful.
Yeah, yeah. I was really kind of confused when I saw Zach Brown and pull the cover off the car, and that was the first thing I saw. I was like,
What is
I
this?
don't know where this is coming, but
Yeah, proud to be a Visa carrier for sure. I gotta be honest there. The the Visa Cash App livery living up to my credit cards for sure. Definitely looking good there. Our biggest question for McLaren, Are they the championship favorites going into the season? We just watched them win a constructors championship. Their car looks to be the fastest, and you would assume that they might have that pace from the get-go this year. They've got two drivers that we rate fairly highly. So should they be the favorites going into the season?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's up at the top. I think it's just going to be so close. And I think right now, from what we see last year, constructors championship wise, they're probably considered the favorites. I think there's probably still some question marks surrounding Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri. Like, does Lando have that championship mentality? Or where is Oscar going to stack up? He's kind of a dark horse, I think, being considered for the championship. Can he string together a full season of good results as opposed to just kind of a section of good results? And, he tends to fall off and still struggles with tire wear. So I don't know. I think right now the obvious answer is, yeah, you probably consider them the favorites, but I think they're a big wild card too, to be honest.
Yeah, well, we're going into the last year of a regulation, and we've got all these teams at the top. So I'm about as antsy for Formula One cars to be back on track as one can get. But we don't have to wait much longer. Cars are back on track next week, and then it's just a short time until we are showing up for free practice one in Australia. We have got a full season of content ahead, so be sure to like, subscribe, follow along with us for the entire year. We are pumped to get to cover Formula One for another season, the best sport in the world with the best fans in the world. We are so thankful for all of you guys that have followed along. Before we get out of here, Brandon, what are your parting thoughts?
Man, I'm just excited. I'm excited for testing next week, and then Australia, here we come. Thankful for everybody who watches and listens to our podcast. We love getting to do this and share our love for Formula One with everyone of you guys. So thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. I'm excited for this season and to put some good content out for you guys.
It is going to be an incredible year of Formula One, and we are so close to 500 subscribers. So if you want to help us reach 500 subscribers, be sure to subscribe right now. We would greatly appreciate it. Like Brandon said, we are thankful for each and every one of you, and it means a lot that you would let us talk about Formula One with you all season long. It means the world. We appreciate it. We will see you next week, right before cars hit the track for testing. But until then, have a great day, and God bless.
See ya.